What's going on, guys? In this video, I want to talk about novation agreements, what they are, how we use them, how to identify the seller that's going to be best fit for a novation, and then kind of how to handle that process, right? So my goal by the end of this video is that you understand what a novation is and kind of how to look at the leads that you're talking with and see who might be a good fit for this instead of a cash offer, right? So novation agreements, really for us, they're a way for us to serve sellers that either want more or literally can't give us the discount that we need to be able to wholesale the property because, like I said, either they want too much or there's not enough equity, right? We've actually had sellers that they would accept a wholesale offer, but they didn't have enough equity in the property to accept that offer, but we were able to perform a novation and put the house on the market and be able to get them what they needed, right? So it's kind of a way for us to bridge the gap between the off-market investor world and the retail buyer world, because obviously an investor, they're going to buy the house as a fix and flip or a rental, so they need to buy it low and either sell high or be able to rent it out so they can do a refinance, all that sort of stuff. So they're looking at getting a deal. Whereas somebody that's going to buy the house to live in it, they're less worried about getting a deal and they're more worried about finding a home. So they're probably going to be willing to pay more, right? So instead, a novation for us is kind of, instead of us being the purchaser in the deal, we're partnering with that seller to get the house sold. Right, and that seller can use our proven process. We buy and sell houses on a weekly, monthly basis, so they can utilize our proven process to get their house sold quickly and efficiently. And a lot of the time they go into it with a guaranteed net number, right? So they know that they're going to get X amount and then we're going to handle the rest and take whatever's on top of that as a profit. And it's been powerful because there's been, like I said, sellers that either maybe they wanted to sell quickly, they wanted to have the as is, the hands off experience, but they either wanted too much for us to pay or didn't have enough equity for us to pay off their loan with a cash offer. So this is another option that you can use for sellers like that. So let me go into a presentation that I gave a couple months ago that's talking about ideal seller types for this sort of stuff, and we'll kind of break it down. So a novation agreement is, like it says here, you're looking for sellers with homes that are in good overall condition, but not financeable by a traditional lender. So what does that mean? Typically, with a traditional lender, now if you're getting like a FHA loan or a USDA loan or something that's very high leverage and the borrower is putting almost no money into the deal, then they're going to be a little bit more picky. But if you're selling to somebody that has like a conventional loan, for example, a lot of the time they're only going to be looking at stuff on the 4-point inspection, right? The 4-point inspection is going to be your roof, AC, electrical, and plumbing. Typically, as long as those clear and those are deemed, satisfactory by an investor, a lot of the time the bank is going to be able to get insurance and the buyer is going to be able to buy the home, right? So a lot of the time we're looking for sellers that their homes are in good overall condition, but maybe it needs, either a new roof, new AC, new electrical, something like that, to where so the retail buyer can buy it on the market with a lender, right? So that seller, typically they either don't want to or can't invest into the repairs to make the home financeable. And like I said before, the seller's willing to take a discount on the property, just not enough of a discount for a cash offer to work. Now, typically, you're also going to want to look for sellers that they don't need the money like right now. They're not in a super big rush to close, and they're willing to partner with an investor to sell their house together to obtain a higher price, right? You're not going to want to do this with sellers that are like, I need to close next week or I'm going to be foreclosed on, right? Those typically, with a novation, you want to be able to have a little bit of a runway. We like to tell sellers between 1 to 3 months. 3 months obviously being pretty conservative, because if you price it right, you can usually sell it in a month or two. But you want to make sure that your seller is going to be able to work with that timeline, and it's not somebody that absolutely needs to sell right now. So a good example of this is actually a property that we did in Wesley Chapel, 7616 Brookline Street. So the seller, they wanted $330,000 for their house, and our max allowable offer was around $310 because we were going to assign it for probably around $320, maybe $325, right? And the seller, they needed a new roof and junk removal and an electrical system. So the house was in pretty good shape, but I think the roof was like 30 years old and there was a whole bunch of junk in the yard. So obviously that doesn't show very well for a retail home, right? Where people are looking for their home rather than investors. Investors care less about junk removal and stuff like that, but a homeowner or somebody that's looking for their home, they're going to be turned off by a bunch of junk. So that was the seller's reason for wanting to deal with an investor and not wanting to put the house on the market, right? And you can see here that the retail value of the home was around $480,000. So they were willing to give us a good discount, just not enough for us to be able to assign that property for a profit, right? And be able to get the seller what they wanted. So the seller accepted an offer in which we agreed to give her the $330,000. We guaranteed her that $330,000. Basically, what the pitch looks like is, hey, so we can't pay this $330,000, but we have a proven process. I get an in-house realtor. You know, I can handle all the junk removal. I can get you a new roof. I can, you know, whatever needs to be done to get insurance bound by the buyer, I can pay for that. We'll put it on the market. We'll screen all the buyers. We'll bring the best one, and then once we sell the house and the deal closes, then you'll get your $330,000 and we'll take the rest, right? After paying the commissions, closing costs, and whatever rehab needs to be done. And so we listed the house for $460,000, and the seller was paid out their $330,000 at closing, and we kept the rest, which was about, if I remember correctly, I want to say we made about $35,000 after all of the net fee, or after all the fees, commissions, and closing costs. So you think about that, that's a deal that we couldn't assign for any profit at all, right? We had to, the seller wanted more than we could sell to an investor for. So even if we locked them up for $10,000 less than what they wanted, we still probably wouldn't have been able to make a profit. But because we utilized this strategy instead, we were able to turn that into I think it was, let's just call it $30,000, a $30,000 profit after everything was done. And we didn't have to buy the house, right? So it's almost like flipping a house without actually having to buy the house. Instead of buying the property from that seller and then fixing it up, you just partner with that seller, do whatever needs to be done, and then you sell it on the market and you collect the spread after the seller's gotten their amount, right? And if you think about it, if I was going to buy that house and then turn it around and sell it, I would have had to pay for closing costs on both ends when I bought it and when I sold it. I would have to pay commissions when I sold it. I would have to pay insurance. I'd have to do all this sort of stuff to where that $30,000 probably would have been all eaten up in little fees, right? Between hard money fees and insurance, you know, all that sort of stuff, which I didn't have to pay for because I didn't buy the house. We partnered with the seller to put it on the market. Screened buyers, we brought the best buyer, we got an agreement put together that was contingent on us putting a new roof on the property, and I think we did some updates to the electrical. I think we got a new electrical panel or something like that, but we didn't have to do any of that until after we had already gotten a buyer locked in, right? Now I did have to pay to clean up the yard a little bit, but that was a good deal, and I knew that it was a good deal, so I was willing to come out of pocket a little bit for the junk removal so that we could show the property better, have some buyers on it, and like I said, we sold it, I think, in like a month, and I think we sold it for, we listed for $460. I think we sold really close to that, and then after all the fees were paid, commissions, like I said, we cover all the closing costs, so the seller still gets the benefits of dealing with as is, right? They get the net number. You don't have to pay the closing costs. You don't have to pay the commissions. You don't have to pay all these little fees. We're going to cover all that. You get your $330,000 once we've sold it on the market to our end buyer, right? So that is that's kind of your ideal seller for somebody like that, right? It's somebody that they're willing to give a discount. They're not in a huge rush, and they don't want to or can't deal with the things that need to be done to sell the property for the highest and best on the market, right? So now in the next slide, I'm going to go into the underwriting a little bit so you can see how I look at these deals and determine how much we can tell that seller that we can give them and how much I'm, kind of baking in for profit and all that sort of stuff. All right, so looking at the underwriting, we're going to want to take the as-is retail value. And when I say as-is, I basically just mean, like, when we're wholesaling, we're typically looking at the ARV, which is going to be, the beautiful homes, the houses that have been flipped, everything has been done, and they're just sparkling, brand new, whatever, right? With a novation, now if your house is in immaculate condition, then obviously you can use that retail value as your sales price. But a lot of the time when you're dealing with these houses, they're houses that they're not in perfect shape, but they're in good shape, right? Maybe they're a little bit lived in, but they don't need a full rehab. So if that's the situation, then a lot of the time you're going to want to look at houses that are in similar shape to your house, right? Like the kitchen, the bathrooms. If your house isn't completely updated, then you want to look at homes that are also not completely updated, right? You don't want to take your house that has maybe a 10-year-old, 15-year-old kitchen and compare it to a house that has brand new granite countertops, a big island, all of that sort of stuff. You want to look at homes that are in the same niceness range as yours, right? And that's going to give you your as is retail value. Hey, if we listed this without doing a full remodel and it was just a clean financeable product, and by financeable, again, I mean it can pass a 4-point inspection, the roof, AC, electrical, and plumbing, then that's going to give you your as is retail value, right? If this was a nice, clean, financeable product, this is about what a homeowner would pay for it. Right, but then we want to sell it quickly in most situations. Now, if the seller's like, hey, I don't care, like just do what you got to do to get the best price you can, then maybe you don't have to add in this 10% discount. But we like to, and it doesn't always necessarily have to be 10%, but my point is you don't want to list it at the exact same price, because then it's going to be sitting with the other houses that are on the market. A lot of the time, our goal is to put it out there at the best price for that product in the neighborhood so that it gets sold, quickly. Right. So you're going to take that number and you're going to take off 10% if you need to sell quickly. Then you're going to minus your commissions and your closing costs. And then you're going to want to take off the rehab and or other services that you might need to pay for, whether it's a new roof, new electrical panel, if there's a bunch of junk that needs to be removed. There's been other times where we haven't had to actually do any work to the property, but we've had to spend money to like clear title, maybe pay for a probate. I can think of other situations where we hired a private investigator to find missing heirs to the property, stuff like that. Anything that needs to be done that's outside of the realm of, rehab or the rehab, of course. So that you're going to want to take that off of the total. And then you're also going to want to minus your minimum desired profit for a regular novation. If I don't have to put any money into the property, I don't have to fix it up, and I'm just listing it and bringing a buyer. Let's say that the seller's like, hey, I want this price and anything on top of that you can keep, then I'll do it for maybe like $10,000. I'll do that as our minimum desired profit. But if I have to put money into the property, then obviously I want to make that back plus a nice profit to make it worth the time and the inherent risk, right? So you want to take out your desired minimum profit, and that's going to give you your net to seller number. And that's kind of the number that you can go to that seller and say, hey, this is what you can reasonably expect to be paid, or quote unquote guaranteed. Once we bring that buyer, we'll pay all the closing costs, we'll pay the commissions, and we'll cover any out-of-pocket expenses that come up before the sale takes place, right? And then you're going to walk away with that net to seller number. So that's kind of how you come up with it. Like I said, if we go back to the last slide, you can see here that it says that the retail value of the home was around $480,000. And we listed it for $460,000. So while that's not technically a 10% discount, this was also in a hotter market. I think we did this maybe in early 2022. So we didn't give it quite as big of a discount, but the point is, you can see, look, retail value is around 480, but we listed at 460 because we wanted to sell relatively quickly, right? So we got a buyer, they paid close to that, and the seller got their 330,000, and we kept the rest at closing. Okay, so I'll go through another example here of just, let's take your classic 1,500 square foot home. Let's say the ARV is about 350,000, and there's a cosmetic remodel that could be done, right? Maybe the kitchen and bathroom, they're in decent shape, but they're a little bit dated, but perfectly livable, right? It's not like you walk in and you're like, oh man, this needs some updating. Let's say that it does need a new electric and some plumbing repairs, but the roof and AC are both in good shape, right? So if we're going to take that and then come over here and look at, okay, so we have a $350,000 ARV. But that's for homes that are, immaculate. Everything's been redone. Everything is beautiful. Let's say we can find comps for around 300,000 that are similar to our house. They have, maybe a little bit dated of a kitchen and bathroom. The flooring isn't all brand new, but it's in good shape, right? It's been well maintained. It's just maybe a little bit outdated. And we find that those houses are going for around 300,000, right? Now, let's say the seller, they're like, hey, look, the least that I can take is, I can take 230 or 240, but I can't go below that, and I need to close in the next month or two. Well, then we'd want to take that discount, because if our houses are selling for around 300,000 on the market, but we want to sell quickly in the next month or two, then we're going to want to list it at around that 270,000. And I don't think my cursor is showing up over here, but just kind of follow along on this right here. So the $270,000 list price, that's what we're going to be looking at. Okay, this is, if we put this on the market at 270, we'll probably get a pretty good amount of interest, right? If you got beautiful homes selling for 350 and you got similar houses to ours selling at 300, I bet if we put ours out at 270, then it'll get blown up. So then obviously we got to pay the 9,000 in commissions, we got to pay the 4,000 in closing costs, and then let's say about 10,000 between the electrical and the plumbing, and we want to make 15,000 in profit. Well, then we're going to have to, if you minus all of these, it's going to come to about 232,000, which would be our direct to seller number, right? That's what we could offer to that seller as, hey, you're going to get this amount once we sell it on the market and we pay for all the expenses, the commissions, closing costs, XYZ. You're going to get that 232,000, and we'll take the rest as our profit, right? Now, if you compare that to a wholesale offer at that same $350,000 ARV, our wholesale price is probably going to be somewhere around 220 to maybe 225,000, right? But for us to make an assignment fee, we're going to have to get it for under that. So if let's say you can wholesale it for 220, but you want to make 15,000, well, your offer to that seller is only going to be 205,000. So that seller may not, they might not want to, or they may not be able to sell the property for 205,000 to allow you to assign it to an investor for the 220,000, right? So this is a way that you can then go to that seller and be like, hey, look, I can't get you that price through a cash offer, but if you allow us to list the property for you, pre-qualify all the buyers, make sure that we're only dealing with the most legitimate and serious buyers, we'll list it, we'll sell it, and we'll fix up anything that needs to be done to get the property to pass the insurance inspection. And then you'll take that 232,000 once we've sold the property. So, Mr. Seller, would you rather take 205,000 as a cash offer, or would you rather make almost an extra $30,000 just by partnering with us to allow us to sell your home on the open market rather than buying it cash from you? So it's a very powerful strategy for the right type of seller. And again, you want to make sure that seller, they aren't in a super tight timeline, right? Now, a month or two, you can probably work with that. But if somebody wants to close in 2 weeks, a lot of the time a novation is not going to work, because you're going to put it on the market. And a lot of the time, retail buyers, they just don't work as quickly as investors. So a lot of the time that house has to be on the market for a week, 2, 3 weeks before you actually start getting real traction on it, right? So that's, again, why, especially if the seller's on a little bit tighter of a timeline, you want to list it attractively so that you get a whole bunch of interest and sell it quickly, right? Because you don't want to partner with that seller and then have it sitting on the market for 2, 3, 4, 5 months before you actually start getting offers, right? So that's kind of how we underwrite a novation and how we kind of look at that. And obviously that's an example of the ability to pay more to a seller or get that seller a higher price if they're willing to partner with you to get the house sold, rather than you putting it under contract as a cash purchase and then assigning it. And again, a lot of the time our pitch to those sellers, the way that we present that to the seller is, hey, so that, in this situation, let's say they wanted 230,000, and we told them, hey, look, we definitely wouldn't be able to pay that for cash. Our cash offer would probably have to be around 200, maybe 205,000. But if you really need that 230,000, we could get you that price, but instead of us buying it, we'd have to use our process to put it on the market, pre-qualify the buyers, get the buyers in here. But the good news for you is that we have a proven process, so we can put it on the market. We'll screen all the buyers, we'll fix everything up that needs to be fixed up, and we'll sell it, and then you'll get that price once we close on the property with our end buyer, right? So, but this is a very powerful strategy, and it will allow you to transact with sellers that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. You just have to pass up on, right, or refer to an agent. So this allows you to kind of cash in on those type of leads as long as there's still some motivation there. So I hope that helps you understand Novations a little bit more. And if there's any questions, obviously hit me up, let me know. I'd be happy to cover them in another video or explain this one in a little bit more detail. But as always, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.